be good. All right. Um, okay. Alrighty. All right. Are you ready to go? There. There, good. It's good. I better check mine. There we go. And then I'm gonna pull up this in case mom texts me. All right. I'm gonna unmute in 3, 2.
Hey guys! It's a little quick for another update, but here we are. We had a lot of things to talk about, so.
Unmute myself. There we go. I didn't
Uh-oh.
unmute myself.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Hello! Hello, part two.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yep.
All right. So,
So
I
we got some good stuff.
it was a little soon, and I heard about this. I read it, like I saw a video about this yesterday, but like today, it's just I've gotten more and more videos about it. So, there's a topic of discussion that was kind of like our main focal for the video, but
Okay.
the live, but
I
we're
don't
gonna
know
talk about a
anything,
bunch
so
of
I'm
stuff.
excited.
Okay,
Yep.
so a lady, an author named Victoria Aveyard, 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 something like that. She
Mm-hmm.
wrote a book called The Red Queen, and it's like a whole series. And what she did
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard of it.
is on TikTok, she decided to make a video describing the plot of this story, right? Just describing
Okay.
the plot as a way to like market and advertise this series, which a lot of people do, granted, on TikTok. The problem is that people went into the comments on this video and essentially started talking about how it was the plot line sounded just like Powerless by the author Lauren Roberts. And we're
Okay.
like literally accusing her, oh, this is just like this is copying this, like Red Queen is copying Powerless and all this
Mm-hmm.
other. But what they failed to do is do a little bit of research. And it turns out The Red
Ooh.
Queen was published in February of 2015, and Powerless was published in January 31st of 2023.
Yeah, I was gonna say Powerless is definitely newer because I remember the Red Queen when
Mm-hmm.
I was in high
I
school.
do too. That was my
Oh
senior
my
year.
gosh.
I remember that vividly. Like I remember seeing it and be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that looks like a really cool cover." Because even back then, me judging books by their
Yeah.
covers. But yeah, and so it's like this whole thing where people all over TikTok are going on, and it's like I'm seeing a lot of comments, like comments back to people about the fact that they need to do their research, and I guess like
Yeah.
people are going side by side and just and talking about just how similar these two books are, and it's like,
Mhm.
you know, and it to be
That's
fair,
crazy.
Lauren Roberts, the writer of Powerless, has said in interviews, and I found one on Publishers Weekly's website. That was This was an interview that was posted in April of this year. It was a Q&A with Lauren Roberts about Powerless. And
Right.
it says, what are some of your biggest fantasy influences? And it says, this was her response. I always like to say that Powerless is a mix between Victoria Aveyard's Red Queen and The Hunger Games. Red Queen is one of the first books I remember reading, which is why I love fantasy. I was obsessed with that book. I loved the whole world building and the ideas of these different powers creating separation between the kingdoms. I also absolutely adored Mary Pearson's Dance of Thieves. It was an enemies to lovers romance, which is one of my favorite dynamics of all time. It is very influential for me, especially when it comes to writing books two of Powerless's trilogy, Reckless. Book two of the Powerless trilogy, Reckless. So
Hmm.
here's the issue. Like here's the big thing is that
Yeah.
people like how much, like obviously if you copy and paste a passage from one book to the other and it's just literally somebody else's writing, yes, that's plagiarism. That's literally plagiarism at its core. But how far can you go before it's influenced by? Like, where's
That is a
that
really
line?
interesting topic.
Because,
Mhm.
like, a lot of people in her, and she literally, the author herself, had to go into these, was replying to a bunch of people in these comments, like, my book was published in 2015. Like, my book was published here. Like, and
Mhm.
like, literally, she had to go into the comments to defend herself because people were like, attacking her and saying that, oh, this sounds just like Powerless, this is copying Powerless, or you're plagiarizing Powerless. And it's like, she literally had to go in the
That's
comments and be
so
like,
sad.
no, no, I was here first, I published this first. If anything, it's the other way around. Like, she didn't, I don't think she actually said that, but that's me
Yeah.
adding my own like context into that. But it's like, I don't know. And that's, I guess that's kind of like, for me anyway, that's like the dangers of the newness of TikTok, of like book talk, because you have a lot
Mhm.
of these series, like even Throne of Glass is not a new series, like it's been rediscovered on book talk. But her books, I'm wanting to say the Throne of Glass came out in 2015, if I'm
I actually
2015
had
too, if
that
I
as
remember
a
correctly.
topic. It's 2012.
2012.
2012.
Yeah, and so
So
it's
I had
like,
that as another topic of discussion later. Yes, so
okay, so
it
it's
all kinda
like,
goes together.
and it's
Yeah.
like, you have some of these books, these series that are being rediscovered, but at the same time, you know, you have these newer books that are inspired by those that are instantly becoming famous as soon as they're published. And then you have people discovering an older series, and be like, hey, this is copying this. And it's like, and then you come to
It
this
was older,
issue.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you have people that don't want to actually do the research and just jump the gun and start
I
like
mean, it's not
making
that hard to
comments.
Google it in 2 seconds and
Yeah.
find out when the book was published. And for me, this is why for like from the author side of things, it's really scary. And it's like because that's happened to me before where I swear I wrote, I mean, you read Immortal in November
Yeah.
when it came out,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now I read Bloodguard, and there are so many parallels and similarities. And I wrote
Yeah.
it a
Yeah.
while back and I just published it this year. And
Yeah.
so people can sometimes you intend to inspire by, and other times it's a pure accident. And if you don't publish something as proof that it came
Mm-hmm.
before,
Yeah.
some of the books that you've written and not published yet,
Yeah.
you got to make sure to copyright your books, because and it is copyrighted as soon as you write it. Like, you can
Yeah.
register your books with the copyright office, but as soon as you write it, like you
Yeah.
created it, that is essentially copyrighted to you. But
Oh
and
yeah.
then it's like there's a whole trend though of something becoming famous, and then everything after that kind of copies
Yes.
and pastes
Yes.
it. And
It's
it's
like a
like you
cookie
said, where's
cutter.
the line between plagiarism and inspired by? And that's a really interesting
Yeah.
like topic, because it's like, you know what I'm saying? And it's like we have all these
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
Fourth Wing, for example. Is a really big bad dark guy with dark hair, and
That
he's got
controls
shadow magic,
shadows.
and he's really
Mm-hmm.
batty. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like Resend, big bad guy, dark hair, tall, dark, and
And
handsome, can control
yeah, and
shadows.
then you also
Every
have,
other
you have some type of
hero is like the same thing.
like you have some type of a female character that has some type of ailment or physical restriction, aka being a human or having a physical deformity or of some sort, or a disease or some sort
Yep.
that prevents them, but then they get stronger and they get some big power, and it's like, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? It's like, and that's
And
where
then
it's like,
it's a love interest.
I guess this really isn't anything new because you see this a lot in like the contemporary romance novels. Like, it just seems you get on a certain trope and then you see the like similar outcomes. It's like Hallmark. Every Hallmark movie is about a small town,
Every
a
Hallmark
city
Christmas
girl that comes home,
movie.
and then you have
Yep.
this a hometown guy, and then some kind of business or farm or something is being threatened, and then the whole process of the town comes together to save
Mhm.
the whatever, or you
Or
have the
like the ones
prince
I've been
ones.
reading recently with the military romantic suspense. Military guy, girl in trouble,
Yeah.
guy saves girl,
Yeah.
epic suspenseful stuff,
Yeah.
romantic, all
Oh
that
yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
and it's like, I don't know, and it's like I don't know, my heart kind of goes out to the woman who published first.
Yeah.
And then it's like at the same time, I don't know, it's like
Well, and
I had a thought, but it's like I don't know how to explain it. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like the new girl, it's like you can take stuff and inspire them by, but like you have to tweak it and make it your own. But then it's like
yeah,
I don't know, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint the plagiarism because again, it's like can you can't copyright a concept, even the Hunger Games concept of people
yeah,
being put into an arena fighting to the death, that
yeah.
goes all the way back to ancient Rome with the
Oh yeah,
gladiators. And
yeah,
so Hunger Games didn't invent it, but Hunger Games was the first one that really went big with it. And then you have other things copying from it, like Blood Guard. You've got the Serpent in the Wings of Night. You've got Throne of
yeah,
Glass. You've got My Book Immortal. There's a portion of it which was the Roman side of the history.
yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? Like and like how Sarah J. Maas started the Fae romances and
Mm-hmm.
everything. Like I back when I was editing for clients like last year, I edited this Fae romance. I remember because I talked to you about her court system and how
Mm-hmm.
it was identical to ACOTAR, and I hadn't read ACOTAR, so I was asking you because you were reading it at the time.
Yeah,
And I was
I
like, how
remember
is the
that.
court system work and this and that? And so um and it was like it's like like the Fae romances is always like a girl gets sent away or bought or sold to the evil Fae king, and it's like
Yeah.
that's every Fae romance that has ever existed. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah. Well, and I got to
a
looking, and
lot
I'm
of
like, I got to
mhm.
looking to see when the last one in the series, in her that series, there's like 4 books in the series. There's the Red Queen, Glass Sword, King's Cage, and Warstorm. And Warstorm was published in 18, so it's like
You know what?
15,
I
16,
think I
17,
have
and
Glass
18.
Sword. Is this it?
Glass Sword, that's book 2.
I bought book 2, but not book 1 because oh, that's right, because I read book 1 when I graduated and I loved it and it ended on a cliffhanger and she hadn't
Oh,
published book 2. And I waited and waited and
yeah,
waited and waited. And so when I first
yeah.
saw this, I bought it
So
and I've
like they
never read it
were,
because obviously I don't remember
yeah,
the first one.
yeah.
So I actually do have this.
Well, and I understand what she was doing. It's like she's taking a lot of like advice, like not like literal advice, but like taking inspiration from what all these other authors like Sarah J. Maas, who managed to get somehow to get like a book series that's been out for a while onto Booktalk and blow it up. Like you see all these books being blown
Yeah.
up on TikTok now. I understand what she's doing. Posting a video about her series that has like over 1 million ratings on Goodreads and be like, hey,
That's a lot.
this is a thing. Yeah, I just
Look at
realized
this.
that. It's like
Yeah.
1,075,367 as of right now. And I'm like, I can
I
see
need to
what
go
she's
back and read
stating.
this series because I'm telling you, I've actually, now that I recognize that it's this series, the
Yeah.
first book, I loved it. I loved the romance. And I'm telling you, this was the worst book I can't talk. The worst book withdrawal I've ever had from
Really.
a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my senior year because I was homebound a lot. So I don't
Yeah.
remember if that was about the time that I was reading it or whatever,
It came
but,
out in 2015, so I would have been a senior.
and it
So
was
you
so
would have been in
unique.
college. You would have been in college.
Yeah, I was in college then. Yeah, because I used Michael's bookmark for this book when I started reading it. So that was back when we and Michael were dating or married.
Yeah.
It was 2015, so yeah, it would have been right before we got married, so we were engaged at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like
And
and
I
for
I
me,
feel bad. I feel kind of bad for both authors because the author Powerless. I mean, she's just a girl that took inspiration from a series that she loved and wrote something about it, which is what everyone does. Like you see people that are like these great writers that will like that take their inspiration, like give credit to like C.S. Lewis or uh J.R.R. Tolkien, and you see all of these, like, saying like, oh, these are the great writers that I grew up with that inspired me to start writing. It's like you see that all the time. And it's like, but
yeah,
this new, I don't know, it's like I like part of me is kind of even hesitant to like just like touch on book talk because there's such this big like let's cancel this person, let's get rid of this person, let's I don't know. It's very negative and very intense on like there. It's like I'm happy staying over on Instagram and YouTube. I'm okay with that. Like I'm totally fine with
Instagram is
it.
healthier than book talk.
But
No offense,
even
like
then,
hot take, but
Instagram has its downfalls. It has its
mhm,
downsides.
I haven't delved into it too much.
Any social media will have its downside, but it's like it was just sad to see because you scrolling through and you have the author trying to like commenting back to people defending herself, and it's like it like literally the ratings speak for themselves, you know?
Yeah. And now
Like
that I know
and
that
then
that's the book that I was thinking
yeah,
it was, like, I can speak for it too. And the thing is, like, at the time that I read it, I would have loved a series like that because it would have
yeah,
kept me like that.
hmm,
Sometimes you want something in that
yeah,
mood and like, you want
oh
more
yeah,
like Iron Flame, like we're waiting for Onyx Storm. So
yes,
what can we read in the
like
meantime while we wait?
yes,
So give
like
me something similar.
well
But the
after
other thing
I
that really hit me, there's
uh-huh,
this meme that actually compares Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Harry Potter.
I've seen that.
And it's like a side by side. You've
Uh-huh.
seen, you know what I'm talking
Yeah, I've
about.
seen that.
Like,
Yeah.
you have a hero, a single male hero, you've got the old wise mentor, you've got, all
Yeah.
these things. And like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, the big three in
Mhm.
movie industry, movie franchises,
Yeah.
and they're copy pasted from each other. So
Yeah, they're
when you
all
look, you
similar.
really
Yeah.
see certain like, you know what I mean? Like the
Uh-huh.
hero's journey is a
Well,
classic
and that's where
style of storytelling for a reason. And
yeah.
so sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I don't
and
know, what is the line of
and
copyright?
it's
You
and
know
it's
what I
even
mean? Like, that's a good question.
and I thought too, it's like it's even a testament. Like if you go look at like of those like big three, the oldest one would be Lord of the Rings, Tolkien. And
Yes.
it's like, and
Yeah.
that's even a testament to like any writer, not just Tolkien, but any writer, including this Victoria Aveyard. It's like when you have a book that's published that kickstarts a whole style of writing, which I don't know if Victoria Aveyard was the original one. So mainly I'm speaking to like Tolkien here. It's like when you have somebody
Mhm.
like Tolkien that wrote in a specific style and wrote a specific type of story that people are using the backbone for and inspiring their own stories and their own worlds, it's like that's when it's like you have to like that's when you have to start applauding the right like the patriarch of that whole writer, because it's like when you see that it's like it's genuinely you know
Yeah, and a lot of time, like, nowadays, I feel like I've seen, quite a few people talk about how fantasy is kind of overrun by romantasy right now, and it's like,
uh-huh
how a lot of there are some people that don't want romance in their
yeah
fantasy. I'm not one of them, but I like a good
yeah
give me a good romantic subplot with an epic
yeah
storyline,
I don't
high fantasy stuff, we're
yeah
good. But how Lord of the like how it's kind of shifted away and it's almost like I could see the need to go back to
mm-hmm
your roots,
yeah
with Lord of the Ring and that kind of style of high epic fantasy.
yeah
Um and like even you said this year you're starting to get more into it thanks to Throne of Glass and
mm-hmm
stuff.
yeah
So, and then the other thing that I wanted to mention again from the author side of things, it's like you see with one of the marketing techniques that you always say is okay, you got to think of your comparables. Find a book series that's similar to yours and tell everybody about it like, "Oh, this is like whatever whatever." And I've publishers, professional publishers tell you to do that. Like I've heard that so many times. But that's the other side of it, the danger of it is that people are then going to be pointing out and
comparing
thinking
it
that because originally that's what my thought was. I'm not going to tell, like, I mean, I'm not going to admit, like, I am going to admit where I got inspired by, but like to me, it seemed weird to voice that out
mm-hmm
loud because then
yeah
you're like, you run into the danger of people thinking that you're copywriting from something. And
yeah
so for me, what I've always done to save myself from that is if I like something, like I love Bloodguard, for example, I'll combine it with something else and
mm-hmm
then add my own twist to
yeah
both so that it doesn't look like either one anymore. But
yeah
it's just like you run that risk. And again, I feel bad for both authors almost because, like you
yeah
said, the
I do
girl who
too.
wrote Powerless is just an author who loved a book.
Yeah.
That was the book that got her into fantasy, she said. So, I mean,
And
and
that's
she
where
probably didn't mean anything bad by it,
well, and
you know?
every author that's ever written a book started out that way. They had a story that inspired them, that caused them
Yep.
to want to write their own story. Like that's how that works. But it's like
Yeah.
you have people that I don't know. It's just it's such a gray, a hazy line between taking inspiration from something and then copying a storyline and just changing the characters.
Yeah.
It's so strange. And it's just like,
And it's hard to know. I think it too, a lot of it does have to do with intent. Like, is the
yeah.
author intending to do this just so they can make money and kind of mooch off of the hard work of somebody else who became famous? Or is it genuinely like, I loved this, like I loved, like the show, not show, but the movie, the book Fallen by Lauren Kate inspired Immortal, and
Yeah.
that one they were fallen angels and she got cursed and lost her memory and was reincarnated or something to that effect, and they fell in love with each other over and over again throughout the ages, but the majority of the book focused on them in a modern day like boarding school, and it touched on like maybe one or two pieces of Russian history, and I remember thinking like I want to go broad beyond just like one or two
Yeah.
cultural eras, and that's kind of how the idea for Immortal started that
Uh,
eventually branched off, but you can see
yeah.
kind of the
The roots of
inspiration
that.
there if you
Yeah.
read Fallen. But it's like, or like with Hunger Games, like if you did like a character that was a baker's son and the districts of future Earth and going to a capital game, like you have to change it up. Like you can't really see the direct comparatives to
Yeah.
Hunger Games when you look at like something like Serpent in the Wings of Night, because it's a fantasy world made of
Hmm.
vampires. The only similarity is the competition, the contest or game or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like it depends on how similar they are, and then the intent of the author. And I don't know,
Yeah.
like it's again, where is that line? And even me being an author, I don't know.
Yeah.
Obviously, copying direct passages or using the similar names would be,
Yeah. Yeah.
copyright. But then you can't copyright certain names either, because it's like, well, if you have a character named Bob, you can't
Yeah.
copyright the name Bob, because I may have a character named Bob, and yeah, he may be an engineer like your character Bob, but I may not have even read your book. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's just there's all kinds of different
Yeah.
nuances to this subject, and it's just like, and again, as an author, I find it really scary. I am so paranoid, and I always want to make sure that I don't copyright anything, because that's the thing.
Yeah.
When I found this out, like when I started writing the Valiant series, I was just writing books in random genres and jumping genres. And then they all came together, and I realized, oh, this is an Avengers Assemble moment. I didn't find that out until last year when I started watching Marvel. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. I did a Marvel thing, but with a fantasy book series, and I didn't mean to. And I wasn't watching Marvel until last year, really.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it. But yeah, my whole book series ended up being structured that way,
Yeah.
and I didn't intend for it to be that way.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I had to take a drink after all that.
Yeah.
Apparently, plagiarism is a topic that gets me fired up, but
No, but it's like it's really
yeah,
just a really unique situation and really interesting.
it is.
All right, you said you had some
Yeah.
theories.
Yes. So, well, actually, along the lines of plagiarism, this is a pure coincidence because we didn't pre-talk about this beforehand. So,
Yeah.
love the coincidences. So, I've been reading Throne of Glass, obviously, as y'all know. And as I've been reading it, I'm getting into it more. We'll talk about all my thoughts later. But one of my thoughts was like, I'm finding this really similar to Hunger Games. And I'm picking out quite a few Hunger Gamesy details that I was like, And so then I got to thinking, did this come first or did Hunger Games come first? And did she take inspiration from Hunger Games?
Yeah.
And so I looked it up. Hunger Games came out March 23rd, 2012, which may have actually been the movie. So I think that might have been the movie. But either way,
Okay,
it came
hold
out in
on.
2012. Well, that's what, yeah, I think that's the movie, actually, on second thought. I should probably, when did the
Okay,
Hunger
hold on.
Games book?
Okay.
Yeah.
Hunger Games book publishing date September 2008.
Okay, so never mind. But either way, I'd read the 2012 thing, and so I was
8,
like,
9
oh,
and 10.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So then I looked up Throne of Glass, and it came out in 2012. And
Yeah.
so at the time, I was like, oh, they came out the same year, but that was the movie, not the book. But either way, it's like Hunger Games actually was published first in 2008, but it kind of blew up,
Around
after
that.
it came out a
Yeah.
little bit. You know what I mean?
Well, it blew
So
up when
the
it was
fact,
announced as a
I don't,
movie, it blew up.
yeah, and so 2012, which is the year she published this, and we've said that she wrote it when she was 16, so she may have taken a while to write it. And so I don't know if she took inspiration from it or if
I
it's
could
just
see
kind of
that.
that the vibe of the era. And so when I'm reading it, and so that kind of hit me that I was like, oh, it's really similar to the Hunger Games. So
Hmm.
it's like a lot of the training, how the competitors are all coming together and they're all training.
Yeah.
And then like
And
it
they
kind
have
of, and
competition.
she's,
Yeah. And there's like different
yeah, and they're
competitions to
being
have it. Yeah.
watched and trained, and like it's very Hunger Gamesy,
Yeah.
which is the slow part of Hunger Games. And
Hmm.
so my thought process on that was like, I wonder if at the time, if this had come out, if I'd read it sooner, if my younger self would have loved it as much as I love the Hunger Games, because I feel like
Yeah.
comparing the two, I like the fantasy version better than a dystopian
Dystopian.
version
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah. That makes
But
sense.
I'm reading it now as an adult, and so my brain is like, if I read Hunger Games now, would I still feel like it's as slow as Throne of Glass? And is this my adult
Yeah,
brain react? You know what I'm saying? And
that's
like,
true.
I'm just wondering how the two compare, both in my younger self's brain and in my adult brain. And so
Yeah,
it's just curious to see if Hunger Games actually would stand up, and or
yeah,
be similar to Throne of Glass, and how it slow it feels.
yeah,
And how not really slow, but just slow too, but like just immature.
yeah,
And I'm like, it's coming off as a YA, but I know the series changes and becomes more high fantasy and like adult fantasy. So I'm kind of excited for that. But yeah, that was my big thought thing. Um so I liked the little princess tidbit was interesting. I'm basically with every character, I'm like, are they going to become important later on? And I'm kind of like, I don't know.
mm-hmm.
I can't remember her name. It starts with an N though. And I liked how they were speaking another language, and how it was like Kale and some of the other guys were like out of the conversation because
Mm-hmm.
Selena can speak it, and the princess,
Yeah,
they were just talking away, and he's like, Kale was getting annoyed and stuff.
mm-hmm.
Um, so and then I like Knox, one of the other competitors, the young thief guy. So he's
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. I'm wondering if he's going to be cannon fodder. My suspicion is that he's cannon fodder, and if he's not, I'm hoping he becomes important to the series because I kind of like his character. But I'm calling cannon fodder on Knox. Sadly, he's gonna die. He's gonna get yeeted somehow. Um, so I really I loved Kale's POV. It was like one scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, page 101. The tail end of chapter 13 had Kale's perspective. So I really liked that. And how he's like, he wants to hate her, but like he's kind of finding himself softening to her and being kinder than unexpectedly kind to her.
Yeah,
And so it's kind of an interesting little, they have a fun dynamic between them where it's like this fun little banter. I don't know if it's going to turn into a romance, but even if it doesn't, I like the friendly banter between them, so that's pretty cool.
yeah.
Um and then sometimes she comes off as she kind of sometimes reminds me of Toph in a really weird,
Oh,
convoluted way
yeah,
because that and the Kaiden mod from the Skyrim Elder Scrolls Skyrim, because she blusters and like, oh, I'm gonna rip your eyeball out, or I'm gonna cut your hair off, or some sort of over exaggerated violent thing that she's saying that she's not actually going to do, but she says it or
yeah,
thinks it to herself.
yeah,
And it kind of comes off as this like, all right, chill, you're not gonna punch somebody's face
yeah,
in or rip their eyeball out, like,
yeah,
relax, girl, you're just blustering. And so it kind of rolled my eyes, but it's just like she just gives me Toph vibes for some weird reason, and I can't
yeah. I can
explain
see
it.
that.
Not because I feel about the two characters the same way, because
Mm-hmm.
Toph irritates me in a way that I'm like, you irritate me, but I like you and I like your dynamic with the other characters. But
Yeah,
I don't, you irritate me sometimes, Toph.
yeah.
And it's like kind of like I like her
That's a good way to
interactions with
describe it.
Kale, Dorian, but she annoys me sometimes. But you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm. No, I get
she's
that.
Toph.
Definitely.
So but she can also, like, I haven't seen Selena because she's trying to stay middle of the pack, but
Mm-hmm.
Toph can back up what she says. Like, she is, the best. I'm the best Earthbender and all
Mm-hmm.
the four nations, you dimwits. And she gets mad and punches like the metal thing that they're trapping her in, and then she figures out how to metal bend. Like, that's Toph. So
Yeah,
I feel like Selena, when we get to see her in action, can back up what she says. But
yeah,
that's basically all of my thoughts.
yeah.
So some of
Uh,
them I did in a check-in this morning when I was outside with the dogs. It was so cute. It was really nice outside. At least I thought it was nice, but everybody else thinks it's cold. But then I've been reading since then, so I had more thoughts to add to that. So I'm getting ready to start the first test or trial or whatever
yeah.
you want to call it. So don't know what it's going to be, but that's kind of where I'm
Sounds
at with that.
good.
What about you? How is your progress? What percentage?
Um, I sorry, I keep yawning. Like this is bad.
You're going to cause me to start. We're just going to have a yawn fest over here.
Yeah, it's that time of night and I didn't make my coffee, so I'm just kind of like
Oh no.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's almost too late unless I take melatonin before I go to bed.
Yeah.
I'm at 27% last time I checked. So I
Hey,
haven't
you're getting there.
I haven't had a chance to read today. I read maybe like a paragraph last night just so I could mark on my Fable that I read. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I haven't read a whole lot. We're right. Um there was like a really intense situation with one character.
Ooh.
Um
Ooh.
that that issue was solved, I think. Or it was has just been
Mhm.
solved. So we're in the process we're in
Right.
like the settling, like
Hmm.
the calm after the storm of that whole situation.
Okay.
Very
Right.
angsty, like
Mm.
very
I love angst.
emotional. I thought something was going to happen to a particular character, but then something
Hmm.
else came and like that I completely forgot about
Hmm.
to change the situation.
The
So
curiosity is killing me. Like, oh, and I can see you're being so careful with what you're saying.
I could give you I if I say a single name, it's going to give away like books of spoilers. So, yeah.
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 Me just trying to pick out, all right, is this character going to be important later? Like, is Nox going to be important later?
Yeah.
I know Kale's going to be, but it's like, how important is Dorian really? Because like he's like, this is the first time we're seeing him again for a while because he's like watching her. It kind of like, remember in the Hunger Games when the sponsors are all sitting there watching her and then she shoots
Yeah.
an arrow in the apple? Like,
Mhm.
that scene is kind of what I have in mind as they're watching them get ready to do the first test.
Yeah.
And so that's the first time we're seeing him in a while. So I will say that Kale has grown on me more than Dorian, but Kale has had more screen time.
Yeah.
Although I did forget to mention, I did Dorian's perspective when he was with his father, kind of was giving
Mhm.
me some raised eyebrow
For
vibes.
what reason?
Um, well, his dad's a jerk, and I like guys who have jerky dads, like, and not beef jerky, but like, actual jerkish behavior dads.
Yeah.
So I'm a sucker for that. I'm a sucker for dads who are jerks anyway, regardless of whether it's a son or daughter, but I prefer male characters with bad pasts, and so I'm kind of
Yeah.
it's his dad seems like a jerk, and so I kind of was like, huh, okay,
Okay.
all right, I
Yeah.
hear you, Dorian.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the other thing, Kale. His backstory seems a little plain, so I know that the series is
Remind
going to get
me
bigger and
remind
bigger,
me
and
what
more stuff is going to have. Okay,
remind me of what
okay,
you
they
know about
talk.
his backstory.
Okay, where are we here? I swear I just got through where they were talking. Okay, his dad took their family back to Aniel. I don't know
Mhm.
how to pronounce that. The Silver Lake, and they were warriors from birth. She notes how they were fighting against the Mountain Men, and then um he was supposed to join the royal council with his dad, but he missed Rifthold, and so he got Dorian convinced the captain of the guard to take me as his apprentice with the help of Brullo. My father refused, so I abdicated my title as Lord of Enel or whatever to my brother and left the next day.
Mhm.
So, and his dad, she kind of assumes that his dad just kind of let him go. And so it's like, okay, his dad went back to this country and he didn't want to be there, so he couldn't leave. And so Dorian got permission for him to abdicate his throne, his lordship title.
Mhm.
And pretty basic, pretty simple. So, but I'm like, okay, more is going to happen in the series. So,
Yeah.
and then she was talking about her. So I'm definitely sympathetic with her. Again, I feel she definitely is a Toph character because she's like that younger sister who's actually annoying. Like I have a younger sister, but she's not annoying. But like if you did have a younger sibling, you love them to death sometimes, but other times you want to wring their necks because they irritate you. And
Yeah.
that's really how I feel about her. It's how I feel about Toph.
Mhm.
Ironically, because that keeps coming up. So I don't hate her like I did when I first started the book. I feel like the first opening scene was not a good indication of who she
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And so it was just like once you get past that opening sequence, she kind of mellows out a little bit. And I really enjoyed her after that.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, the curiosity about the later books is absolutely killing me. And that's part of why I'm like pushing so hard is because I'm like, I want to know.
Mhm.
That's where curiosity is actually my friend in this case. So,
Yeah.
but I found a nice balance. That was the other thing. I found a nice balance between playing Skyrim and this and reading. So
Oh, good.
Like, it's a reward to play Skyrim if I hit my reading goal for the day, and to finish
Oh,
it, I need to read at least 4 chapters a day. So it's like today I'm supposed to get to chapter 16, and I'm in 15, so I got a little bit of reading left to go. Um, and so it's kind of that's
yeah,
basically is kind of like my little balance. But
yeah.
so I did have a couple of theories, but
Okay.
first I did forget to shout out a few authors yesterday. So one of them I
Oh,
actually
cool.
have their book with me, the other one I do not. But Alien by H.A. Pruitt. I did mention this in our 2024 Book Awards video, so that'll be up soon. Be looking for that next
Yeah.
couple
Next
weeks.
week.
Christmas
Next
Eve,
week.
actually.
Next
Yep.
week.
But she is revising this book. So I've already read this book, and as you can see, I've annotated it. But she's re-releasing it because she released it a long time ago, and this was with a publishing company, like this exact copy. And then that publishing company got canceled. Like, I don't know, something happened, and like the publishing company doesn't exist anymore, but they just leave them up. And so she got the rights back, and so she's re-releasing it as
Awesome.
officially a part of her book series, because
Sweet.
it was like the self-published books in her series was separated, and so now she can finally have them all together.
Yeah.
So she's revising it, she's revising the cover, and it's coming out in January. I don't know
Sweet.
when, and she doesn't have the new cover
Have
up
they?
yet.
That's what I was just getting ready to ask. I'm like, I need a cover review.
Nope, not yet. I will as soon as I have a cover, but she draws and designs them herself, and like I said, this is an early, like long time ago her,
Mm-hmm.
but her later ones are like so good. I envy her. She's actually maybe designing some characters from Survivor, hint hint wink wink, so we
Ooh.
may be working on that a little bit.
Sweet.
So that was H.A. Pruitt, Alien. Her series is still up if you guys want to go check it out. And then the other author that I was going to shout out is another friend, Jenna Zark. She is releasing a book called North Beat Christmas, and it's the Beat Street series, book 3. Um, okay, where she attached the blurb, so I gotta go and paste it. Okay, it's middle grade / YA fiction. Um, Okay, I gotta scroll. Okay. When Christmas is weird instead of wonderful, you can't just give up. 12-year-old Ruby Tabetta and her older brother Ray are visiting their father in the artist neighborhood of North Beach, San Francisco, as Christmas approaches in 1958. What should be a glorious holiday turns sour as Ruby and Ray discover their father's growing addiction to alcohol. When
Mm.
Ruby finds work at a popular bookstore near her dad's home, new friends and adventures distract her from worrying. Ruby's experiences lead her to a daring decision to get her dad to stop drinking, and a surprise that brings new meaning to her life. So it actually sounds pretty good. You know me, I'm not one to read about teenagers, but I
Yeah.
love the real issues being brought into things. And it's interesting that it's set in the 1950s. So that's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
But a really nice website. I was just going to shout out her website, jennazark.com. Go check it out. It's really pretty. I really like
Oh,
that.
cool.
So yeah, so that's our 2 book recommendations.
Yeah.
So my theory for you,
Okay.
I don't know what I think on this. So would Rhysand have stopped Feyre? Spoilers for ACOTAR, the whole series. I'm barely caught myself. So would Rhysand? You're rubbing off on me in a bad way. All right, would Rhysand have stopped Feyre and Tamlin's wedding in ACOTAR if she hadn't asked for help?
No.
No.
He allowed
Imagine how
her
that plot would have gone.
he allowed her to go back to Tamlin because he thought she would be happy, and that's what she wanted, if I remember correctly. Like they're like,
Yes. Yeah.
and it's like when I think it's like in Mist and Fury when they're talking about all that. I think maybe I can't remember. I'm wanting to say that somewhere. It hints at that somewhere, but it's like
Hmm. I
Reese's
can't remember exactly
character
when.
and his thoughts towards her. Like there were certain things whenever they were with Amarantha under the mountain, which I have a comment about her, by the way, that I just thought about
Okay.
randomly the other day. Anyway,
Okay.
but when they were with Amarantha under the mountain and all that, like there were certain things that he did because he like genuinely cared about her, and then at the time it looked like a bad thing from her perspective. It was actually him like watching out for her, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like I genuinely am. If she hadn't have asked for help and hadn't expressed that displeasure or that expressing that rejection of not wanting to go through with it, he wouldn't have stepped in, and she would have been married to Tamlin.
Can you imagine how like a what if scenario things had gone differently?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, because I have issues with Tamlin now. I want him to be redeemed so bad, but It's
Yeah.
interesting. I feel like the reason, and I love the psychological deep thoughts here, because the reason why he values her choices so much is because his were ripped away from him.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
my heart. Ugh,
Yeah. Oh
how did
yeah.
I ever
Okay.
as recent as my favorite male character?
My thought.
All right.
Okay, random thought.
Yeah.
It bothers me how quickly we got over Amarantha. It bothers me that her spoiler, her death and everything was just so swift at the end of Akatar.
I
And
wanted her to be a bigger bad guy.
she's hinted at, and she's mentioned in passing, but she has literally no more influence in this bigger story going on. And that may just
I
be
feel
she
like
may
she
have
should have
just
been
been
a
a
bigger, yeah.
and that's where it's like she may have been just a pawn for an even bigger evil. And it's like then you have like spoilers again, then
Well,
you
so
have
was
like the
Vader.
king, then you have that king guy, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
Is it Hybern?
Hybern, the King of Hybern,
And
yeah.
you have
I
him who's the
genuinely want
even
her,
bigger
I
evil
yeah,
over her. And then it's like this is where me getting into this whole Kingdom of Ash vibe, is there an even bigger, because it feels like things aren't settled, it just feels very uncertain, all of the kingdoms are very unsettled, the whole thing feels very unsettled, like there's more issues that haven't been brought up yet. And that's where it's like
yeah.
in my head I'm like, are we just seeing pawn after pawn after pawn for this bigger evil that we just haven't been introduced to yet?
I kind of want that to be
I
a thing,
know, I
because to me,
do.
I genuinely, the first time I read it, I thought she died too quickly. And but the King of Hybern was set up as the big, the Sidious kind of character, But I do like, even Vader served Sidious, but Vader had a huge influence on the Empire and the world around him. And so I feel like Anna Maranthia should have had a bigger influence on
Yeah,
the world
yeah,
around her, and like her, even if she still died at the end of Akatar,
yeah,
her influence, if you
yeah,
will, should
yeah.
have been carried over. Like, yeah,
And I don't know how
I
she
do
would have
agree with
done
you
that.
on that.
I don't even know how she would have done that, but it's just it bothers me how quickly she was just killed off and moved on from.
Yeah, same. I mean, if she'd ruled for 50 years, I kind of like, you should
Yeah,
see the cultural implications
yeah.
of that kind of spreading.
But
And so
it's
that's where
like
I
all the
read
other
an
kingdoms just
article
moved
that,
on.
like,
Like they just went back to living their
yeah,
life like as if nothing happened. And I'm like, but yet when she was talked about, she was like talked about as if she was just the worst person on the world. Like just the worst person ever. And it's like,
yeah. Even in Throne of Glass, you get to see the effects of the king of whatever, Adeline or whatever,
uh-huh.
and how he's conquering one territory or another. And like, she talked about the princess chick and like her people, and Aeolus, I can't pronounce any of these things, but the little princess chick that starts with an E, like her kingdom starts with an E. They
Yeah.
were speaking another language. Like, and then the slavery, and like, you can see the effects of people living under an oppressive society,
Yeah.
even in this one, that
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, again, Akatar focused on the romance and not the bigger story and the bigger world.
Yeah.
And I do feel like, because I read an article that said that could the TV show potentially fix that and fix the King
Nehemia,
of Hybern? Like, it was talking about the King of Hybern,
are you talking
you
about
know.
Nehemia?
Oh Lord, where? Okay, hold on.
Are
I
you
gotta
talking
find the
about
conversation.
the are you
Yeah.
talking about the prissy girl that is like flaunting over Dorian?
No,
Or
not the K name. Nemia. Nemia
Nehemia.
from
That's how I say it.
Nehemia.
Nehemia.
Okay, Nemia. For me the H is silent, but either
Yeah.
way. Um I'll have to listen to the audiobook because I actually
Well,
have that. So
and
her
the wiki has the
place is
pronunciations
from
on it too.
Elway. Elway.
Elway, yeah.
Elway. I was like, Wally. Elway. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
the kingdom of Elway, and like the slavery and the oppressive society, because it's
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Akatar is a romance, and it didn't focus on the bigger world. And so the article that I read the other day was like, the King of Hybern, could the TV show make the King of Hybern a better villain? And it's like, can the TV show or anything make Amaranthia a better villain? Because she was like a really, really good villain, but she should have been like a big bad villain. You know what I'm saying? Like, she was
Hmm.
a really, really good villain
Yeah.
for somebody who was only supposed to be a minion. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, my thing is, they acted as if she was the worst person, like the absolute worst. But then she's just killed
yeah,
off like that. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. it doesn't match the vibe of
Yeah.
how they were talking about her and how they were describing her. And I'm like, okay, like,
Kind of seems like
yeah,
like one of those things where like you write book one and you don't know where you're going with the rest of the series, so everything kind of
yeah,
unfold. Like I've done that before.
yeah,
We've all done that before
yeah,
at some point. So
yeah, that's true.
yeah, it is really interesting. Um, so yeah, but I don't know if you had any other things to talk about. I had a few others if we had
No,
the time. I don't know how long we've been going.
we are
How
at
long we've been
40,
going
like
for.
45 minutes is what we're getting ready to hit. So,
Cool. Also, how are you guys doing in your December TBRs? Let
yeah,
us know in the comments.
yeah,
Curious how you guys are doing and what y'all are reading.
yeah.
So, um, which ones did I don't know what I even clicked on. So yeah, it was 10 great fantasy book series that have happy endings. And
Okay.
I saw some covers that I recognized on here. So, um the first one that they talk about is Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, which
Hmm.
1954 to 1955. So yeah, I don't know if they're talking about the first book or like the series as a whole, but so and then The World of the Five Gods by Lewis McMaster, Bejeweled, which is 2001 to 2021. Um, I've never heard of that one. So The Percy Jackson and the Olympians by Rick Riordan, 2005 to 2024. So apparently that series is he still publishing in that, I wonder? As I've never read that
Probably,
one.
probably. There's so
Yeah.
many. All of his series are linked together somehow, and it gets
Hmm.
me confused. So I usually
I'm
have
pretty
to
sure
look up
he
a
was the
reading
one that
order.
wrote I'm pretty
Percy
sure he
Jackson.
was the one that wrote the Attack of the Clones novelization. Um
Okay.
so his writing was really good in that one, I think.
Yeah.
Shades of Magic by V.E. Schwab, 2015 to 2017.
That name sounds
It
familiar.
Yeah, it does. I just don't know what else from.
Yeah.
I wonder, was it the Goodreads awards we were going through on me and you? Like we were doing it on our own for fun, and we were looking at what was nominated, and it sounds like I don't know. I want to say that author
No,
or something was
that's not
nominated.
where I know it from, but I know that name.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where I've heard the name before.
Yeah.
Next is An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir, 2015 to 2020. I actually have that
I have
book
the
right
older
here,
cover. Yeah.
actually,
Mine's down there.
the older cover.
Yeah, I do
Apparently, I
too.
have older covers.
I've
What
got
is
that
I
one.
was trying to see the hardback. Yeah, it's just a plain hardback book.
I've got
Nothing
the
pretty
paper.
under.
I think I've got the paperback version, I think.
Yeah, but I bought that a long time ago.
Yeah, me
So
too.
that one, Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo from
I have that
2015 to 2016.
I have that one
Yep, we
too.
bought that at the thrift shop together. Remember, we got them really
Yeah.
cheap, and we were like, "Yes, buy them and read them together." And
Yeah.
we haven't read them yet.
Yeah.
So, the Winter Night trilogy by Catherine Arden, which I haven't heard of, and then The Folk of Air. Yeah, The Folk of Air by Holly Black, which is the Cool Print series,
Yeah.
2018 to 2019. I like the cover of The Queen of Nothing. I didn't notice the snake there. It reminds me of Hunter. That's really cool.
Oh, yeah.
And then this is the one I was interested in the most. The Last Hours by Cassandra Clare, 2020 to 2023, which is Chain of Gold, Chain of Iron, Chain of Thorns.
Hmm.
And that's the one I haven't read yet because with both of her series, she goes back and forth between like Victorian era and modern times. And this is one that she went back to the Victorian era
Oh, okay.
or old era. And I'm not really interested. So I'm like waiting for her to get back to modern era again. Um, so yeah. Um, a Song Below Water duology by Bethany C. Morrow, 2020 and 2021. And then yeah, that's the last one. So
Yeah.
yeah, here I got an article about the French blurb of Onyx Storm, actually.
Oh. Yep.
Okay. So angsty.
Mhm.
But yeah, I gotta get a drink in my throat.
The only other thing I can think of is that we put a link to our actual Discord that we made, and it's down
Yes.
below. So that's a new thing.
Yep. So feel free to join our Discord
Yeah.
server. As it's growing, we'll be as active as we can be. And it may be a little slow if there's not a whole lot of people, just us and everything. But
Yeah.
we can go there, talk about books, book chats,
Yeah.
like all that stuff. And it's kind of like where we can interact with each other.
Mhm.
And as we do these reading challenges together, I think it would be a great place to kind of foster that community of like book
Yeah.
club reading and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
Yeah, so there's several
yeah,
different
that's gonna be
channels.
fun.
There's like your basic general chat, and then you have a spoiler chat and a non-spoiler chat. So that way, if you want to talk and not have to say spoiler before you talk about stuff, you can go to the right channel and just start typing away. There's like a self
That's catered to
promo.
you.
So there's a self promo section where like if you're a writer, an author, small business owner, whatever, bookish content related things, that's one of the like the main area where you can go and do that and not worry about breaking any major rules or anything, as long as it's in there. And then you have a couple of voice chats just for chilling and reading and stuff like that, reading with friends, which I sometimes like
That's
doing.
fun. I did too.
So
Speaking
just a
of
couple
which,
different things.
I'm
So
actually kind of getting into this one, so it's gonna be fun to just read.
okay, all
Yeah.
right. So
But,
that's all I had,
so
unless you have
interesting.
something else.
Not really. I had a few others that I could talk about, but they're kind of like meh topics. So it's like I just
That's
the
fair.
plagiarism one is really the
Yeah,
kind of the hot topic. Like,
yeah,
let us know what you guys think in the
yeah,
comments below, and if
definitely.
you, especially if you've read either of the books,
Yeah,
the first
yeah,
one, the Red
yeah.
Queen,
And
and then the Powerless or whatever,
like
which I have
one,
seen those, so I have thought about them.
yeah, and I have two. And it's like, but one of the main thing, one last thing that I saw is that I've been seeing, like, I saw one clip in particular video of somebody that was essentially like shading on a person that gave like they give Red Queen a three, like a two, 3 out of 5 stars, but they give Powerless a 5 out of 5, and they were like essentially like indirectly shading or like shaming them indirectly, and it's like let's not get into this habit of shaming people for what they like to read. That's what gets
Yeah,
people
that
like
rubs
my
me the wrong
that's
way.
what gets my like people like my students into this rut of like I don't want to read because like it's like in that whole
Yeah,
thing of like guys like I love it when I see like couples where they swap books, and there's one couple in particular on TikTok, I forget their name, but like they're constantly swapping, they swap reads, swap books, and so the husband gives a book for the wife to the for this girl to read, the guy gives to the girl gives to the guy, and it's like swapping. I think one of them was like Akatar, different things, and it's like they're constantly
yeah,
swapping, and it's like getting rid of that stereotype that like, oh, historical fiction just has to be a guy thing, or romantasy just has to be a girl thing. Like it doesn't always. It's not. You know what I'm saying? And it's like I feel like
yeah.
people get into this rut where
I
they
really
want to
want to do
shame
that
people
with
for
my girl.
reading things, and it's like
Mhm.
don't shame people if they
I
want to read, because reading books are knowledge. That's how you gain awareness of life and what's going on, is
Mhm.
reading. And it's like people make the same mistakes from history because they don't read about it. They don't learn. And it's like if you aren't
Yep.
building your awareness and your knowledge, then you're just bound to repeat the same mistakes other people have made in the past because you're not learning from them. Or you're not, it's just as fun. It's like just diving into it and completely forgetting about the stresses that happened in the day. Like you know what I'm saying? And it's just
Yeah, it's
like,
escapism. And for
yeah,
me, this may be a hot topic as an author because, like authors, we want our books to be rated high. But for me, I firmly believe that book readers have the right to rate but your book whatever they want, so long as it's not one of those, oh, we hate this author, so let's go 1 star
yes,
spam,
yeah,
reviews to
yeah.
shame the author and blah blah blah. I'm not a fan of that either.
No, I'm not.
But if you don't like a book, I believe you have the right to rate it 1 or 2 stars. I
Yeah,
prefer constructive criticism, so
yeah,
that's why I rate
and
things the way
that's
I do.
why,
Like
yeah,
I list the positives, I list the negatives, I'm open about the critiques, and then I give my
yeah,
overall thoughts. And
yeah,
sometimes my critiques for them, like, oh, hey, this book had really, bad editing, but I still really enjoyed it and it was a fun ride.
yeah,
And like you said, book reading is learning, but it's also escapism. And
yeah,
for me, like, go read and have fun and stop worrying about all this stuff because that also deters readers from leaving
yes.
reviews. Like, they may read, they may not tell anybody about it, and then you're not doing the author any good. So it's like
Well,
people
and
should be not afraid to
yeah,
leave reviews.
and
I
piggybacking,
feel like a lot of people are afraid.
yeah, and piggybacking off of what you just said about like authors and reviews, and it's like, as an author, like if you were an author, I don't if I was an author, I wouldn't want a bunch of fake 5-star reviews. I would want legit, truthful reviews, so that way if I need to take this off of Amazon and do some real editing and reworking and re-advertising and rethink some things, I can do that. Because
Yep.
sometimes people are so close to like a project or a creation or a writing that it's like a book that they're writing, or it's like you don't see the little things that like an average reader would see. And it's like i would want I would want 10 genuine reviews versus 50 fake ones any day. Like, but I'm not a
Same.
writer, so
Yeah.
it's like I don't know if my opinion really matters in that sense, but it's like if I were a writer,
Yeah.
that's I would much rather want a genuine review, so that way I knew if in the future when I'm writing things, if I need to like check myself, or whatever.
Yeah.
But
And I do, it's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, like you want the critiques and like I always want them, it will still take a piece of your heart and your soul away
yeah,
because
I
like
can see that.
especially if it's one thing if you haven't prepared and like you just put the book out, but
Yeah,
if you've poured like years of like editing and you think it's this is as good as it's going to get and then you get a whole bunch of like negative or like not even constructive criticism, just like I don't
yeah,
like this or whatever, it's
uh-huh,
gonna break your heart because you've poured like,
yeah,
oh, I thought I fixed that. I thought I edited this. I thought I had this right. But
mm-hmm,
I always want the critiques because I guess it's because I started on Wattpad and in that one for people like you were it used to be you could put books out there for free. You could read it for free. People could like it and they could also comment and they could comment on specific
yeah,
lines,
mm-hmm,
like different sentences. And so I started in this with very very detailed reader feedback, every
mm-hmm,
line, every sentence, every chapter. I was
yeah,
getting intense feedback at like live by like
yeah,
play by play on
yeah,
feedback as I wrote, the Valiant
mm-hmm,
series and stuff. And so I was able to cater
yeah,
like, okay, they like this, they want more of that, that sort of thing.
yeah,
And so for me, I like value people's
yeah,
thoughts so much that when I first switched to publishing, it wasn't enough just to get a review at the end because I was used to having comments
mm-hmm,
every chapter,
yeah,
and so it was a big adjustment for me. So I
yeah.
value
Well, and
feedback,
like
negative
describe
or positive.
the way you describe that, like the commenting system on Wattpad makes me think of like how at least my Kindle will sync with Goodreads. And so when I highlight or make a note on something and I make a comment, like a
Mhm.
comment as a note on something on a line, I can choose to make those comments public on my profile in Goodreads or to hide them. And it's like
Yeah.
that reminds me a lot of like that instant feedback factor.
I didn't know about
Mhm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
All
so I
right.
think that's all of our updates.
Yep.
I'm a little bit more hopeful than I was last time that I think I may get this done before the end of the month. I
Same.
was kind of like, "Oh, I'm not going to do it" last time we checked in, but I'm kind of like maybe I will. Cuz
Yeah.
honestly, it's really sad because you're reading a 900-page book and you're making so much progress page-wise
Yeah.
compared to me, but I don't, like I'm like I'm struggling through a 400-page book and you're just gliding right along through 900 pages. So
Well,
here
to
we are.
be fair, the her writing has grown and matured from that one to this one.
True. I'm
So,
all the way back in 2013
yeah.
over here.
Like, and I struggled through
Yeah.
that one too, more so than I'm struggling through this one.
Yeah, I kind of
Cuz
forgot about
like
that part
cuz
actually
like
because it's like
my
you love
main
the series, I kind of
review,
forgot.
yeah, like my
Mhm.
main review for my initial thoughts. I don't think I've actually wrote a full review for it yet. That's how far behind I am. But I think one of the main things that comments that I made was that it felt slow, and I was seriously considering whether it was worth it to go to the next book in the series or not. Like, so it's like
Wow. Yeah.
I was getting bored. And that is
Yeah.
a like I know for me personally, I know that that is a very dangerous thing for me because if I get bored in a series, I will not finish it. Or
Yeah. I am the
it'll
same
feel like
way.
an assignment, and that's when I tank.
Yeah. Like required reading for school or
Mhm.
something,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
I hate
Or
that.
like
Yeah.
the pages in college that I had to read about teaching math and teaching reading.
Yeah.
The literacy practical.
Honestly,
No,
the
it's just like
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kinda how I feel, but I have a curiosity to get to the other series, and then we're also doing the podcast, so I like being able to talk about it, and just the
Uh-huh.
community, like, even though it's just me and you right now,
Yeah.
the sense of community of reading books
Yeah.
and just talking about it is
Yeah.
kinda like, "Okay, I've got it's a bigger assignment. We're like it's a college assignment here instead of just a stupid high school one," like, it feels a little bit more important, and I am getting into it, so it's
Yeah.
just, like, getting in my head of, like, my 2012 self when I graduated high school and not my 30-year-old self, so
Yeah. That's fair.
but yeah, so
Alrighty.
alrighty, well, again, let us know all your thoughts in the comments below, and, again, like and subscribe
Yeah.
because
Join the
we're still
Discord.
new and we're excited. Yes, join the Discord, that's gonna be fun,
Yeah.
so
I'm excited.
me
Alrighty.
too.
See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.